They say freedom is free. But let me ask you something. Why does it feel like you have to finance it over 30 years with variable interest? I was told I was born free. But by the time I was 5, I had to stand up and pledge allegiance to a flag I didn't understand. By 10, I was learning history written by winners who forgot to mention who paid the price. And by 18, I was legally free to vote for 2 options that sounded exactly the same, just wearing different ties. Welcome to America, where freedom is your birthright. And also your bill. Here's the thing about freedom in America. It's less of a principle and more of a performance. A stage play. Broadway-level stuff. Big flags. Bigger speeches. Even bigger lies. We are the land of the free. Just don't get sick. Don't protest the wrong way. Don't say the wrong word in the wrong place on the wrong platform. Don't be poor. Don't be black. Don't be brown. Don't be too loud. And for the love of all that is holy, do not question the troops. We tell the world that we are free because we can choose between 37 flavors of cereal at Walmart at 2 a.m. Because we can speak our minds online while the algorithm quietly decides what gets seen and what gets shadow banned. Because we have a constitution that apparently comes with invisible asterisk. Let me ask you this. What is freedom if it comes with conditions? If it's sold back to you by the very people who took it from you? See, in America, we don't have freedom. We lease it. Monthly. With late fees. And a customer service rep that puts you on hold forever. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the idea of freedom. Hell, I'd subscribe to it if it came in a bundle with dignity and health care. But this American version of freedom, it's like getting invited to a buffet and realizing everything costs extra. Freedom of speech? Sure. But the mic costs money. Freedom of the press? Sure. But most of the press is owned by billionaires. Freedom of religion? Yeah, as long as it fits neatly within the box of Judeo-Christian comfort zones. Freedom of choice? Yeah. You can pick Pepsi or Coke, both owned by the same conglomerate. Yay, liberty. So today we're going to talk about it. Not the fireworks and flag-waving stuff, but the uncomfortable, unfiltered, untidy version. The version that asks, what if freedom in America isn't what we think it is? What if we've been sold a dream wrapped in red, white, and blue, but filled with IOUs? This is roughly speaking with Hussein, and this is the first truth. Freedom is expensive, and you're already paying for it. They say the truth will set you free, but they rarely mention how much it costs to tell it. Because here's the thing in America, truth has to compete. Compete with noise, with branding, with entertainment, with billion-dollar campaigns designed to distract you just long enough to keep you from asking, wait, who's actually in charge here? And while you're busy choosing between Netflix plans, someone else is choosing how much your insulin should cost. Let's dig deeper into this freedom, this word we throw around like it's salt on fries. Everyone uses it. Politicians swear by it. CEOs whisper it into mission statements. Protesters shout it in the streets. Preachers rap it in scripture. Influencers hashtag it under gym selfies. But what does it mean? Is it freedom when you need 2 jobs to afford 1-bedroom rent? Is it freedom when the average college graduate starts adulthood with a chain made of student debt? Is it freedom when your healthcare provider has more control over your body than you do? People say, well, at least we're not like North Korea. Okay, that's a low bar, my friend. That's like saying, well, at least I don't live in a burning house, just one that leaks and has rats and occasionally punches me in the face. Freedom in America is more about image than substance. We become masters of symbolism. We kneel for an anthem. We salute a flag. We decorate our trucks in red, white, and blue, and we believe that somehow that makes us righteous. But you can't eat a flag. A soldier coming home with PTSD doesn't get healed by a bumper sticker that says support the troops. And a mother working double shifts at minimum wage doesn't gain dignity from being called a hero of the working class by a man in a $6,000 suit. We love the performance of freedom, It's clean, photogenic, exportable. It makes for great speeches. It wins elections. But freedom, real freedom, is messy. It's not just about being left alone. It's about being equipped. It's not just about rights. It's about access. It's not just about permission. It's about power. And that's the part we never talk about. We tell people, you're free to succeed, while quietly hiding the ladders. We say, you can be anything you want, while stacking the odds against half the population before they even learn to read. This isn't freedom. This is theater. And we're paying for front row seats with our time, our sanity, and our dreams. They like to say, hard work is all you need. That's the golden lie. The American myth wrapped in bootstraps and broadcast through generations. But here's the problem. Not everyone starts with boots. Some are born into neighborhoods where the schools don't have books, where the roads are cracked, the water's brown, and the only reliable thing is the sound of sirens. Some are born into wealth so thick they can fail upward for decades and still get called geniuses. So when they say freedom, they mean it differently. To the rich, freedom means time. To the poor, freedom means survival. There's a reason the rich talk about taxes like they're chains, while the poor talk about medical bills like they're death sentences. One man's inconvenience is another man's collapse. This isn't about envy. It's about clarity. It's about seeing that a system built on imbalance will always sell freedom as a product instead of a principle. Let's talk work. You're free to choose any job you want, as long as it's hiring. You're free to quit, as long as you can survive without income. You're free to negotiate your worth, unless you need health insurance this month. We package jobs with slogans like opportunity and grind culture. But most people aren't climbing ladders, they're running in place on corporate treadmills. And the moment they stumble, they're replaceable, forgotten, buried under HR-approved condolences. The irony? We celebrate Labor Day by not working. We post quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. while silencing the things he actually fought for. We thank essential workers, then pay them the least. That's the twisted beauty of American freedom. It's full of applause for stories of struggle, as long as they end in success. We love underdogs, but only the ones who make it. No one tells the stories of the people who didn't. The ones who burned out, broke down, gave up. Because in this country, if you don't win, it's your fault. You didn't hustle hard enough. You didn't manifest properly. You didn't grind at 5 a.m. while listening to a podcast by a guy who inherited millions. We've turned freedom into a game show. Winners get applause. Losers get ignored. But real freedom, real, honest, grounded freedom doesn't look like a competition. It looks like security. It looks like rest. It looks like being able to say no without losing everything. It looks like dignity without debt. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good. That means you're still awake. Let's talk about choices. Americans are obsessed with the idea of choice. We think the more options we have, the freer we are. 30 kinds of toothpaste, 100 cable channels, thousands of job titles that all mean underpaid and overworked. But choices don't matter if none of them lead to real change. That's not freedom. That's a menu of illusions. Think about elections. Every 4 years, we line up to pick between two candidates, both funded by the same industries, both coached by the same consultants, both wearing red or blue like it actually means something. We're not voting for visions. We're voting for brand identities. And still we're told, this is democracy in action. But what kind of democracy gives you 1 day to vote, forces you to wait hours in line, and then closes your polling station if you live in the wrong zip code? That's not choice. That's choreography. In reality, freedom isn't about choosing between two versions of the same system. It's about being able to challenge the system altogether without being labeled a threat. And that's where we draw the line in America. You're allowed to complain, but not organize. Allowed to express anger, but not demand alternatives. Allowed to protest until it inconveniences someone important. Because deep down, power here is afraid of real freedom. freedom that empowers people to unionize, freedom that lets workers say, "No, I won't do two people's jobs for one salary," freedom that lets teachers shape curriculums based on truth, not comfort, freedom that says healthcare isn't a product, it's a right. But that kind of freedom doesn't sell. It doesn't fit in a commercial. It doesn't look good in campaign ads. It's messy. It requires humility. It means giving up control. So instead, they give you fake freedom. They give you fast food and a fast internet and 1,000 streaming platforms. They say, you're free to live however you want, while making sure every path forward is paved with interest rates, hidden fees, and NDA clauses. And we eat it up because we're tired, because we're told, at least you're not in a dictatorship, as if low standards are the goal now. But what if freedom meant more than that? What if it meant not having to calculate whether you can afford to break your arm? What if it meant being able to say no to exploitation without risking homelessness? What if it meant that survival wasn't the baseline and dignity was? Because here's the truth. Most of us aren't looking for luxury. We're just looking for space to breathe, time to think, a life that isn't constantly clawing for the next paycheck. That's not radical. That's human. There's this strange thing Americans do. We confuse inconvenience with oppression. A store asks you to wear a mask, and suddenly it's tyranny. A social media platform bans your conspiracy theory, and you're a political prisoner. You don't get your burger fast enough, and you scream about your rights. Meanwhile, somewhere in your own city, a single mom is working 14-hour shifts just to afford rent that went up for the 5th time in 2 years. She's not screaming about oppression. She's too tired to scream. That's the real trick of American freedom. It convinces the comfortable that they're victims and convinces the suffering that they're just unlucky. You'll hear phrases like freedom from government overreach thrown around a lot. But when a corporation tracks your every move, listens to your conversations, sells your data to the highest bidder, that's just called terms and conditions. When the government gives $1 billion tax cut to a company that lays off half its workers, that's called stimulating the economy. But try asking for student loan forgiveness, and suddenly you're a lazy, entitled freeloader. Funny how that works. We've built a country where the most basic forms of support are labeled as handouts. But billionaires asking for bailouts are called job creators. And if you point this out, you're told you're just jealous, or worse, you hate America. But maybe loving something means wanting it to live up to its promises. Let's talk about the military for a moment. This is the part where everyone gets quiet, because nothing is more sacred in America than the idea of supporting the troops. But what does that support actually look like? Is it the thank you for your service from strangers in airports, or the reality that 30,000 veterans are homeless? That PTSD is treated with waiting lists instead of care. We send kids to wars sold to us on lies, bring them back broken, and then ask them to survive a system that forgets them the moment the uniform comes off. Freedom isn't bombing countries for oil. It's not waving a flag over another land and calling it peace. It's not glorifying war, then ignoring the wounded. Freedom would be giving those same soldiers something more than a discount at Applebee's. It would be giving them healing, purpose, belonging. But again, that kind of freedom doesn't sell. Real freedom doesn't make money. It doesn't boost quarterly profits. It doesn't fit neatly into marketing campaigns. Because real freedom requires work. Not from the oppressed, but from the comfortable, from those with power, from those who benefit. And that's the hardest truth of all. Let's step into the school system, the great American equalizer, or so they say. We tell every child, education is your ticket out, but we don't mention that the ticket comes with fine print, interest rates, and the kind of debt that haunts you longer than a bad marriage. In rich neighborhoods, schools look like small colleges. They have theater programs, debate teams, robotics labs, gluten-free lunch options. in poor neighborhoods, leaky ceilings, outdated textbooks, security guards instead of counselors. And somehow we act surprised when the outcomes are different. This isn't a gap, it's a chasm. It's a system where zip code matters more than potential, where kids are punished for being born in the wrong block. We claim to value education, but only as long as it's profitable. You want to become a doctor? That'll be $300,000 in loans. You want to study art? Be prepared to explain your worth to everyone at Thanksgiving. You want to be a teacher? God bless you. And by God, I mean not the paycheck. Even the content of what we teach is curated for comfort. We teach sanitized history, heroes without flaws, wars without consequences. We skip the parts that make us uncomfortable, or worse, illegal to teach in certain states. Land of the free, where discussing racism in classrooms is divisive, but banning books is protecting children. We're raising generations who can code apps, but can't name a single labor strike. Who can recite the Pledge of Allegiance, but not the names of the people whose land we stole? Because real freedom isn't just about living, it's about knowing. And a well-informed public is dangerous to those who profit from ignorance. That's why freedom in America is often marketed, but rarely delivered. Because the more you understand how the system works, the more likely you are to question it. And questions, they make people in power very, very nervous. That's why they prefer you entertained, distracted, overworked, scrolling, always scrolling, too tired to read, too busy to organize, too broke to risk anything. This is how they keep freedom expensive. By making sure you never have enough time, energy, or security to ask what you're really paying for. And yet, somehow through all of this, people still believe, still fight, still show up, still organize. Because deep down, we know that what we've been given isn't enough. That this version of freedom feels like a knockoff, shiny on the outside, hollow in the middle. And maybe that's the start. Not accepting the lie is the first act of liberty. Let's land this plane. We talked about the myth, the branding, the performance. We talked about how freedom is sold, rationed, distorted, turned into a luxury good that only some can afford. But now comes the hardest part. What do we do with that truth? Because once you see the strings, you can't unsee the puppet show. Once you feel the weight, you can't pretend it's not there. And once you realize that the system isn't broken, it's working exactly as designed, you stop waiting for it to fix itself. That's where the fear creeps in. Because the truth is heavy and dangerous and lonely. You start sounding like the crazy one at dinner, like the angry coworker, like the radical. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe being radical just means returning to the root of the word freedom, the root of the promise that built this country, not the marketing version, but the one whispered through generations, that every person should be able to live with dignity, to speak without fear, to rest without guilt, to learn, to heal, to question, to hope. That's the version of freedom they can't sell, because it can't be bought. It's built in community, in solidarity, in unions, in classrooms, in street corners, where people share what they've learned without waiting for permission. And maybe it starts small. You notice your coworker being underpaid, and you say something. You see your neighbor struggling, and you offer more than a thought and a prayer. You learn your country's history, and you teach the real version, even when it's uncomfortable. You stop mistaking survival for success. You stop measuring your worth by productivity. You stop letting billionaires define what's possible. And when enough people do that, when enough people stop playing the game starts to break. Because power isn't magic. It's maintenance. And the moment we stop maintaining the illusion, it crumbles. That's the true price of freedom. Not comfort, not silence, but awareness and action. Freedom isn't a destination. It's a question we ask every generation, and the answer is always earned. So no, America isn't the land of the free. Not yet, but it could be. And that possibility, that quiet, dangerous, beautiful possibility, that's what keeps us going.